Hello. Welcome to our New Jersey Self-Advocacy Project Stay Healthy at Home webinar series. You are watching Draw the Line, Understanding Harassment and Personal Boundaries. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Erin Smithers. I am the Assistant Director of the New Jersey Self-Advocacy Project. We have been a division-funded program with the ARC of New Jersey since 1983. We support the state's largest network of individual self-advocates and self-advocacy groups. We also provide comprehensive trainings like this one and resources to self-advocates, direct support professionals, family members, and agency personnel. I will have some polls and some interactive questions for you. You can type your questions, comments, and your feedback right in the Q&A box, and that should be located on the bottom of your screen. You can also use the raise hand button if you have a question, but we are all going to stay muted and camera off, so the Q&A will just alert me if you do have a question. You can also enable closed captioning by clicking on the live transcript button. You can move your captions around to wherever is best for you, and you can also hide them if you want to. You can see a full transcript as well in your chat box. So today we're going to discuss how to identify inappropriate behaviors and harassment. We're going to learn about proper social norms and cues and understanding and expressing boundaries. So first I want to get started with a poll. Why are boundaries important? They make people feel safe and comfortable. They're an integral part of healthy relationships. They are a part of respectful behavior, and they set a guideline for how you want to be treated. And this is multiple choice, so you can pick more than one. You can pick one, you can pick all of them, whatever you think. Why boundaries are important. So again, why are boundaries and respect important? They make people feel safe and comfortable. They are an integral part of healthy relationships. They are a part of respectful behavior. And they set a guideline for how you want to be treated. It looks like we have a lot of participation, which is awesome. Thank you. I'm going to give it one more second, and we can go ahead and see the results of this poll. So 78% say they make people feel safe and comfortable. 100% say they're an integral part of healthy relationships. 67% say they are a part of respectful behavior, and 78% say they set a guideline for how you want to be treated. And everybody is right, because the answer is all of them, all of the above. They do make people feel safe and comfortable. They are a very important part of having a healthy relationship. They are part of respectful behavior and how you treat people and how people treat you. And they also set that guideline for how you want to and expect to be treated. So let's go into what respect is. Here is the definition: due regard for the feeling, wishes, rights, or tradition of others. But I want to hear from you. What do you think of when you hear respect? Be respectful, treat others with respect. What are some things that come to mind? And again, you can type that in the Q&A box or in the chat box. What are some things that you think of that just pop into your head when you think of respect, being respected, or treating others with respect? Honoring others' opinions, definitely. Yeah. Even if you don't agree, right? Just respecting that other people have opinions and maybe differing opinions than yours. Listening to people speak, excellent. Very respectful. How about how you're treated or how people who are respectful treat other people? What are some examples of respectful ways to interact with other people? There's some common things that a lot of people do. Formal speech, yeah. Respecting others by using their preferred pronouns or their titles, treating a person how you want to be treated, right? That's the golden rule. Not interrupting or formal gestures. Excellent. Yeah, those are all fantastic examples of respectful behavior, respectful language. Basically, respect is just taking the necessary steps to ensure that you are making people feel comfortable and safe. And you're going to hear me say that a lot, comfortable and safe, because that's the goal. That's how we want people to feel. But respect is more than just being polite, right? Sometimes people think of manners, saying thank you, you're welcome, but it's taking the initiative to treat others in a way that anticipates their needs, their wants, but also is respecting their boundaries. And someone says, be nice to people, not using bad words or hurting feelings. Exactly, right? Respectful language. So respect is being polite. We've already talked about that, using manners, saying please, thank you. We want to make sure we're using appropriate language and the correct titles and terms when you're talking to other people. Being kind, right, Adam? Using manners, holding the door open for someone else, supporting someone or helping someone who needs extra support or help. Respecting boundaries. It's a great idea to ask people what their boundaries are. And in the same line, we want to make sure that we're getting consent for when we're interacting with others. It's exactly right, Liz, honoring personal space. So whether we're asking to borrow something from someone or asking if it's okay to hold someone's hand, asking for consent ensures that people will feel comfortable around you and that you're respecting the space of everyone else around you. You also want to take responsibility when something goes wrong. If you cross a boundary or disrespect someone, the appropriate response is to accept that you made a mistake, which we're all human. We do that. It happens. But we want to take ownership of that and apologize. And depending on what happened, the other person might not want to talk to you, and that's okay. That is their right. But we should always acknowledge our mistakes and try harder and better next time. And then also providing support to those who need it. If someone needs emotional or physical help, it's nice to help them, but we don't want to take advantage of the situation and push things further than they are wanted. So for example, if someone asks you for your help to carry something to their door, it is not permission to then go inside their house. If someone wants to talk to you about a personal situation, it doesn't mean they necessarily want your advice. They just ask to vent and to speak, and they ask for someone to listen. So if someone asks you for something, you can do that thing. But again, we want to get consent. We want to have a conversation, or we want to ask before we do anything else beyond that. So part of socializing is understanding those unspoken boundaries that people have and respecting them. Sometimes it can be really hard to learn what those boundaries are. So let's go over that. Boundaries are technically where one area ends and another area begins. So this could be a physical boundary, but it can also be an unseen, invisible boundary. So what one area ends could be our personal space, and the other area that begins is an area where people are allowed. Basically, boundaries are rules that we set for ourselves, rules that other people set for us, and rules that are kind of just out there. Boundaries can change with location. They can change with different people that we interact with. And also boundaries are going to change over time. The more we learn about ourselves and what makes us feel safe and comfortable, the more our boundaries will change. Yes, someone put 6 feet apart in the Q&A. That was a physical boundary, right? That was set to keep everybody safe during the pandemic. Excellent. So what are some examples of your personal boundaries? So someone put 6 feet apart. That's a great example of a personal boundary that we had. If you want to hear about some of my personal boundaries, I am not a big hugger. I do a lot of trainings. I used to do a lot of trainings in person before the pandemic. And when that happened, people would come up and they try to give me a hug. Some people I knew, some people I didn't. I prefer handshakes. So I have to make that boundary known. I don't like hugging necessarily. There's a select few people who I do like to hug. Everyone else, I just let them know. Maybe I'll take a step back, reach out my hand, and let them know I prefer handshakes. I'm cool with high fives. I like pounding it. I like elbow touches. Those I'm all comfortable with, but that's what I prefer. So that's a personal boundary that I have. What are some personal boundaries that you have? Some things that make you feel safe, make you feel comfortable around other people. It could be, you don't have to get too detailed if you don't want to, just something that makes you feel comfortable when you're around other people. During the pandemic, I definitely had more personal boundaries. We have a little child and an elder adult in my home, so we had to be very safe about making sure how we interacted with other people. We preferred people to wear masks around us. We wore masks around everybody else. We liked that 6 feet, distance between us. Those were some of our personal boundaries. Someone says, I don't like to be touched while I'm eating. Excellent. Yeah, that's I think a common boundary. I don't know a lot of people who like that, but that is definitely, thank you for sharing. Arrange myself so that my back is covered, stand or sit next to a wall. That sounds like also you have assistance from a personal boundary, like a wall or having something covering your back. That's definitely a personal boundary. I actually know a few people who don't like having a lot of people behind them when we go out to eat. They like to be the one facing the room instead of having their back to everybody. So definitely that's a personal boundary. What are some other personal boundaries that you have? I know a lot of people don't like it when people use their stuff without asking. Touching their items, their clothes, using, their personal belongings without being asked. It's a very common boundary that people like to set for themselves. Is there anything else that you'd want to share about your personal boundaries? You can just type that in the chat box or in the Q&A box. Oh, kissing during COVID. I think that a lot of people avoided close personal contact during COVID, definitely. Excellent. Thank you all for sharing. So we have our own personal boundaries, but there's also boundaries in society, kind of invisible rules that we all follow. We might not even realize that they're boundaries set by society, but the invisible rules that we follow when we're out in public. Something that comes to my mind is when we're shopping and we're standing in line. It's kind of an invisible rule to still give space between you and the people in line. You don't want to be right up next to that person or not to cut in line, right? You have to respect that there's a line, people are waiting, and you go to the back of the line. Those are some of society's invisible rules. Can you think of any other boundaries that are set in society that we kind of all follow? Again, might not even realize that we're following boundaries. It's just something that we do because we're trying to be respectful. Speed limit. Yeah, that's great. Or like even just driving safe, right? We want to make sure that we're keeping other people on the road safe and comfortable. Speed limit is a law, though. You can get in trouble. But yeah, I would say that's definitely a boundary. Some people also have personal boundaries about speed limit. How walk limit too. Yeah, there is kind of like that unspoken rule of when you're walking, right? We walk on the right side of the sidewalk or the aisle. We don't want to kind of stop in the middle. That's kind of seen as rude. So that is definitely a societal rule that we all kind of follow. Excellent. We talk about some of the things that make us think of respect. Those are also part of society's boundaries, right? Not using rude language, not yelling, limited topics to talk about. Excellent. Yeah, we're going to go over that later, but definitely that's a great example of kind of a rule that we all follow when we're out in public. Excellent. Before we go any further, though, I just want to remind everybody that every person is different. Every person has different boundaries. Like we just went over a bunch of different boundaries that everybody has. I might have some of those, I might not, but you need to just understand that something that you have as a boundary, someone else might not have, and vice versa. They might have a boundary that you don't. So we don't want to treat everybody with the boundaries that we have set for ourselves. So it's important to talk to other people, find out what their boundaries are, what their preferences are, to again keep everybody feeling safe and comfortable. So just remember, every person has different boundaries. It's not your job to understand why they have those boundaries. It's just your job to respect them. So we talked about some of those invisible rules or social norms, those boundaries that society has that we're all supposed to follow. Personal space, definitely a big one. You guys mentioned that. Making sure, you know, especially during the pandemic, right? There was that 6-foot rule, but there's also that unspoken rule of if you're at a grocery store and someone's standing in front of something that you want, you say, excuse me, or you wait until they're done. You don't just kind of like go in their personal space and grab something, stick your arm in front of their face. We give people that bubble of personal space. Respectful language, you said that also. It's a common boundary to assume that most people have. Making sure we're not cursing, using negative language, rude language, or name calling is something to be aware of when interacting with other people. You should also be aware that if you borrow something without asking, that's breaking, you know, one of those social norms. We have to have appropriate behavior. We want to ask before we take something or use something. This is just a good example of appropriate behavior. And again, we never want to take without getting consent. We don't want to ever take something that's not ours. We also definitely never want to touch someone without getting consent. So this could include, but is not limited to, kissing, hugging, patting someone's back, tussling someone's hair, giving someone a back rub, touching someone's body, touching someone's hair, touching anything else on another person. We always, always, always want to ask before we do that, before we touch someone, even if it's someone you're friends with, even if it's someone you work with, even if it's something where you're just trying to help out in a situation, maybe helping someone put on their coat. Again, that's their body. You need to get consent before you go into their personal space. And then personal time is also another big invisible rule that we need to adhere to in society. So there's a few different ways that what I mean by when I say personal time. If you're trying to reach out to someone about their job or work-related questions, then it needs to be done during work hours. One email is okay to send, but do not expect a reply until they are at work again. If they're off the clock, they should not be working, and also neither should you, right? We have to respect that there's work time and then there's personal time. Also, calling or texting at night is something most people dislike. It's safe to assume that after 8 p.m., unless it is an emergency or a planned call or visit, you should not be calling people, texting, or showing up to anyone's house. If you have plans, like I said, that is different, but spontaneous calls, visits, or texts at night can be disruptive to someone's routine or sleep habits. We also don't want to assume that something is okay for other people. If you don't like it, chances are that other people don't either. However, if you do like something, we shouldn't assume someone else likes it either. Again, everybody is different, and we have to understand that. And if at any time you're unsure, something might make someone uncomfortable, or if you think it might be a boundary, just ask them. No one is going to get upset about asking if you can do something. You're respecting them. You're respecting their boundaries. You also want to respect the environment. Asking about boundaries during work is not the time. You're supposed to be working. When you're at work, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Asking for consent doesn't come up a lot at work because we should just never be touching someone else at work. And even asking for consent at work can make people feel a little uncomfortable because it's not the right environment. So when you're on your break or after work, if you two want to get together, have that conversation, that's fine. And I say work, but really the environment could be, volunteering or a religious gathering, or in like a library. The environment there is just not a conducive place for talking. So we want to make sure the environment is right. And even if you're working with someone you're dating or you're seeing, you're not getting paid to be affectionate with each other. So you're not getting paid to kiss or hug or be on a date. You're at work to work. These are just some of the invisible rules that are set by society that we're all supposed to know and follow. And it is just as important to set our own boundaries as well. Oh, sorry, Adam, I just saw you said, don't be late at work or you'll get fired. That's a professional boundary, right? That's something that you're expected to do. You're getting paid to be at work, so you should be at work. Excellent. Here are some tips to help you set your boundaries. Firstly, you want to let people know about your boundaries when you first meet or when you first see them. People might not be aware that they're crossing a boundary, so make sure to verbally, if you can, verbally tell someone what your boundary is. Sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable, but it is something that needs to be done if you want something changed. And remember, advocacy is all about standing up for yourself in all situations, and communication is the most important part of setting boundaries. You want to set clear expectations. Let people know what you expect out of a situation. This way people know what their role is and how they fit into a situation. And this goes along with the next point of being specific. Do not be afraid to tell people exactly what it is you want, exactly what makes you feel uncomfortable. Tell people exactly what you need so that everyone is aware of the details and the specifics. I always say that we're not mind readers. Nobody is a mind reader. So we have to let people know. You also want to set your boundaries early, as soon as you know of them. Sometimes our boundaries change as we change. And like I said before, that's completely normal. But it's important to let people know right away if something did change. You might have someone forget about a boundary, or a line might be crossed over and over. So don't be afraid to repeat yourself as often as you need to. This is a part of standing up for yourself as well. You might have to have a talk with someone if a boundary keeps getting ignored. And on this slide, I have a website right here, which gives you a lot more information and more tips about how to build and preserve your boundaries. We also might find ourselves in a situation where we feel one way, but it's important to read the cues that other people are giving off. And sometimes it can be hard to understand the situation when nonverbal cues are being given. So we do know when we're making people uncomfortable sometimes, but sometimes we might not. There are some signs that you can look for to really understand the gravity of the situation and understand how the other person is feeling without verbal communication. If someone walks away from you or away from the situation, they're literally trying to get away. We should respect their choice and give them their space. If someone starts avoiding being near you or talking to you, again, they're trying to put distance between you, and you need to, again, respect their choice. This could also mean if someone doesn't answer your phone calls or your texts, they are making a decision to not answer or to not respond or to not see you. So whether we like it or not, we need to respect that. If someone if someone starts giving off a certain body language, like folding their arms, making weird faces that show discomfort, or flinches when you try to reach out to them, those are signs that they are uncomfortable and they do not like the situation that they are in. If someone seems to get angry fast with you, or they seem to have less patience when talking to you, then that is a big sign that they do not want to talk to you. Yeah, someone wrote FaceTime. So I include FaceTime in with texts and phone calls and emails. If you're trying to reach out to somebody and they're not responding, you need to respect that. And then the most important takeaway is, how is the other person acting? Do you know them very well? Are they not acting like themselves? Do they seem a little different? If they seem a little different, or they're kind of fidgeting and they don't normally do that, or if they're looking at everything else besides you, they are giving you more body language cues and clues that they don't want to be there. They don't want to be having that conversation. And again, we need to respect that. So we need to understand if we're making someone else uncomfortable, we should be changing our behavior. Respectable behavior means that you are aware of how you influence certain situations. You want to take responsibility for that behavior and change so that you can make others feel comfortable. Because, and this is very, very important on why social cues are so important. When they're not followed, it is seen as rude, disrespectful, bullying, harassment, or even assault. So let me say that again. If these social norms are not followed, it can be seen as rude, disrespectful, bullying, harassment, or even assault. So Jake, you wrote, shouldn't it be better for someone to tell the other that they want to be left alone than not respond at all? Definitely. You want to be honest in how you feel. And if someone is uncomfortable, like we said, they need to express that boundary. But sometimes that can be hard for people to do. Sometimes confrontation or even speaking up for yourself can be really hard for people. So them not responding at all is a response. So while, again, it might not be something that we like, it might not be something we understand, but it is something that we are getting. That is a response that we're getting. No response at all is still a response. It's an absent response, and we need to respect that. Okay, so before we move into the harassment and the assault portion, let's practice with some case examples. Again, you can type your answer in the chat box or in the Q&A, but let's see what you think. You're meeting someone you never met before. You want to run up to them and give them a hug to say hello. Is this an appropriate way to greet someone? And what social norms could you be breaking? So you are meeting someone you never met before. You don't know them. You want to run up to them and give them a hug to say hello, because that is how you like to greet people. But is this an appropriate way to greet someone, especially someone you do not know? What do you think? Let me know in the chat or in the Q&A. Liz, capital N-O. I like that. Firm answer. And no is a complete sentence, by the way. So yeah, definitely no. This is not an appropriate way to greet someone, right? First of all, there was no discussion of consent for hugging. Is hugging okay? The other person might not like hugs. You don't know because you don't know that other person, right? You're just meeting them. So a social norm would be personal space, right? We're breaking that personal space boundary. We're breaking intimate touch boundary. What is a socially appropriate way to greet somebody? What are some ways that are okay to greet somebody, especially someone you're just meeting? What do we think? Speak, but don't touch, right? Yeah, you could just say hi, right? Unless they extend their hand, then you can do a handshake. Well, Jake, you wrote walk instead of run, and yeah, running up to someone can be very intimidating. What we want to focus on is the hugging. The hugging, even if you walk up to somebody and give them a hug, that is still an inappropriate response, because again, you're still violating their personal space and you're touching them without their consent. But yeah, saying hi, waving, introducing yourself, handshake, those are all very socially acceptable ways to greet somebody, especially somebody that you don't know. Excellent. All right, here's another one. Are these appropriate questions to ask someone? Does this person seem comfortable with these questions? I'm going to read a text exchange, an example. So we have a text from Sarah from Facebook. Hi, you look really pretty in your photo. Can you send me more pictures? Make sure one is of your whole body. What's your address? Can I come see you? Are you playing hard to get? Where are you? And the person responds, no, please stop. But they continue. You know you like me. Come on, just send me one photo, please. And the person responds, leave me alone. What do you think about this conversation? Are these appropriate questions to ask somebody? Let's just start there. No, definitely not. Excellent, Adam. These are completely inappropriate questions. Whether you know the person or not, the person is sending text after text after text. They sent 3 texts. They did not get a response. That again is a sign you do not want to do that. That's very controlling behavior, irregardless of what the person is saying. Just that act of texting over and over again without a response is aggressive, controlling behavior. However, the content they are texting is also highly inappropriate. The other person is clearly uncomfortable with this line of questioning. They say no. They say, please stop. They tell the person to leave them alone. They are not comfortable with this text exchange. If someone says no, you need to stop. If someone doesn't respond, you need to stop. It is inappropriate to ask these questions to begin with, but there was definitely no consent to continue. What would you do in the situation if you were receiving texts like this? What are some ways that you can protect yourself from getting further texts like this? What would you do? Yeah, you could tell someone, block them, definitely. Yeah. On any device, on any phone, on social media apps, you have that ability to block them. Yeah, you could say, don't text me, please don't text me, please stop. This person did that, but definitely you are expressing your boundary. You're letting them know what you're comfortable with. Excellent, fantastic answers. All right, so harassment versus bullying. Let's talk about it. Harassment and bullying are not quite the same thing, though harassment can include bullying behavior. This is the official definition of harassment. It's defined as unwanted conduct related to a relevant characteristic which has the purpose or effect of violating an individual's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment for that individual. And pretty clear, when we think of harassment, we kind of get some ideals in our head, there is actually no legal definition for bullying. It is seen as behavior that's malicious, intimidating, offensive, insulting, and causes emotional or physical harm to the recipient. And that's why bullying and harassment are sometimes used interchangeably when we're talking about hurtful or harmful behavior. They are kind of similar, but there is one big difference. And that is bullying itself technically is not illegal. And then it crosses the line into being considered harassment, which is illegal, especially in the workplace when it relates to a protected characteristic. So if you're being bullied or harassed about your age, your sex, disability, your gender reassignment, marriage or civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion or belief, or sexual orientation. If you are bullied or harassed on any of these topics, then it crosses the line into illegal harassment. And this is a lot of information that we're getting into, and it can be kind of confusing. So please, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A. You can also post anonymous questions in the Q&A in case you would prefer to remain anonymous. So some examples of bullying: spreading rumors, yelling or shouting, repeated negative comments, excluding behaviors, undermining behaviors, teasing. All of these things we kind of think of like one of the biggest times in our life when we are bullied is when we're in school. Could also happen at the workplace, but a lot of people think about times in school when they were bullied, and maybe some of these things happen to you. Just because bullying is not illegal does not make it appropriate or acceptable behavior. So even if you might be being bullied but not harassed and you can't legally do anything about it, just know that it is not okay, and you should get help for that situation. Even though it is not illegal, there are still things that can be done. And then some examples of harassment: derogatory jokes, slurs, which are offensive and negative slang for different races or different people of certain sexual orientations, really anything that attacks one of those defined characteristics that we went over. Unwanted or unwarranted touching, intimidation, repeated behaviors, and abuse of power. And I see a question: should discriminating based on romanticism fall under harassment? So I'm not sure what exactly you mean by discriminating based on romanticism. If you're talking about maybe discriminating because you're romantic with someone and they get different treatment than other people, I mean, that's kind of harassment. I would say that's more bullying on the other people that are in that situation. If someone is discriminating against someone because they feel romantically attracted to that person and it is not returned behavior, then it is definitely harassment. And now let's talk about the different forms of harassment. So the big one that everybody always thinks of is sexual harassment, which refers to when a perpetrator acts in a sexual or romantic way towards an individual who does not want this attention. Behavior is also classified as sexual harassment if it involves making a threat, such as, if you don't do this, you're going to lose your job, or a promise. If you do this, I'll give you a promotion, based on the victim carrying out a request. Some examples of sexual harassment: brushing up against someone, staring at someone else, lewd jokes, sending inappropriate pictures, inappropriate touching, making sexually offensive gestures, asking for dates after someone says no, and stalking. Other examples of sexual harassment can include innuendos directed at an individual, pressure for sexual activity, remarks about a person's body or clothing, unwanted messages, letters, calls, emails, or gifts, unwelcome requests for dates, and inappropriate physical contact or comments. And now let's go talk about physical harassment, which refers to when physical attacks or threats take place within a space. Physical harassment examples can be hitting, kicking, destroying property, threatening behavior, using a weapon as intimidation, spitting, and pulling hair. Another type of harassment is psychological harassment, which refers to when the harassment negatively impacts the victim's well-being. And some examples of psychological harassment can be opposing everything someone says, stealing credit from someone, misplaced blame, gaslighting, which is a term used for someone to make them question their own reality. So specifically saying that something that did happen didn't happen, and getting to the point where the person doesn't know what's real and what's not. Belittling others' thoughts or ideas, and compulsive lying. And then lastly, we have third-party harassment, which refers to harassment when the harassment comes from someone outside of your company. So you're at work when it happens, but the harassment is done by someone who doesn't work with you. So it could be a customer, a client, a vendor that comes on site or interacts with employees, independent contractors working for the company, employees of a different company, a company that come to offer different services for your company, like a caterer or a water or a plumber person, security guards who are responsible for the security of the building, examples like that. So if you are being harassed in any of the ways that we talked about while you're at work, but it's from someone who doesn't currently work at your company, that's called third-party harassment. There is a difference between harassment and assault. Yeah, someone mentioned bagger in the Q&A. Yeah, a bagger would work for your company, but if you're a bagger and a customer starts harassing you, that would be third-party assault. So sexual harassment versus assault. Sexual harassment is a prohibited form of sex discrimination under both state and federal law. It includes unwanted sexual conduct, such as unwelcome sexual advances, verbal conduct, physical conduct, and requests for sexual favors in instances which the following apply. Your submission to the unwelcome advances is made as an explicit or implicit condition of your employment. For example, if you want to work here, you're going to have to go on dates with me. Your agreement or rejection of the conduct is used for employment decisions. For example, if you don't do this, you're not going to get the promotion. The conduct unreasonably interferes with the ability to do your job or creates an intimidating or hostile work environment. For example, someone constantly talking to you, asking you for dates, being inappropriate with you. It hinders your performance. You have to start to feel uncomfortable in the office and in the workplace just because of their existence. Or you were subjected to sexual displays of offensive material, inappropriate jokes, or pictures on an ongoing basis. So again, if someone's sending you nude photos all day long and you tell them to stop, you don't want them, you don't like them, that would be considered sexual harassment. And then sexual assault occurs when you are the victim of intentional physical contact that is sexual in nature without your consent. This can include unwanted sexual touching, rape, and other similar acts. So a comparison of sexual harassment and sexual assault. Sexual harassment might be illegal in the context of your employment, while not necessarily being illegal under the criminal law. So you may be able to seek remedies for prohibited sexual harassment under the state or federal civil rights laws. So because sexual harassment and sexual assault are different, one might be applied to your state, one might be applied to your employment. If you think you're being harassed or assaulted at work, you definitely want to reach out to, I'm going to go over exactly who, but a police officer, the HR in your company, things like that. And then sexual assault is considered to be a criminal offense that is committed against another person, regardless of their employment. So sexual harassment might be more applied to work. When you're outside of work, it might be considered sexual assault. It's all kind of very confusing. The different terms have specific definitions and specific examples and specific environments. But what you should know is that if you're ever made to feel uncomfortable, if you're ever being harassed or bullied or assaulted, none of it is okay. And you should reach out to somebody to help you. Also, not resisting physically or verbally does not necessarily constitute consent, especially if you're intoxicated, unconscious, or otherwise physically incapable of refusing. If you verbally or physically refuse the overtures, you also have not given consent. So we had talked about earlier, if you're looking for a response from someone and they don't respond, no response is still an answer. It's still a response, and it's no. If someone doesn't explicitly say yes or present in a way that they can communicate that the answer is yes, then the answer is no. If someone is too tired or too drunk to talk or give you an answer, that is not consent. And that's very important to understand. So now let's practice with some of these new terms that we have learned. So you work with someone you find attractive. You think they like you too. You go up to them and you start to rub their back at work. What do you guys think about this? You work with someone that you find attractive. You think they like you too. You go up to them and start to rub their back at work. Jake says it crosses a boundary. It does. It definitely does. Absolutely. Work is not an appropriate place. Yeah, we definitely talked about how the environment is important, but also it says you think that they like you too. So you're not sure, which means you didn't have that conversation. If you did not have that conversation, if you did not get consent, is it okay to go up to somebody in any environment and start to rub their back? What do we think about that? No. Again, Liz with the capital N, capital O. No, definitely. Yeah, no, there was no mention of consent given. There was no mention of that they're dating, that they're both in agreement of this. This is extremely inappropriate behavior. Consent was not given. You are now physically assaulting someone because you are touching them without consent. Excellent. All right, next example. Someone starts yelling at you and calling you terrible names. You get so angry at them and push them. You really want to punch them. Is it okay to hit someone if they're being mean? Never. Yeah, never. Never, never. It doesn't matter if they hit you first. It doesn't matter if they're just yelling at you, if they're being mean. It is never okay to physically assault someone, and that's what that would be. This is bullying and physical harassment. Even though someone wasn't mean or someone was mean, it does not give you permission to touch anyone else, especially with something violent like punching, hitting, or kicking. Yes, they should not have said those things to you or yelled at you. That is not appropriate behavior, but you can only control how you react and how you behave. It is never okay to hit someone. And if this takes place at work, both people are going to get in trouble. You can tell your boss or your supervisor that, but they started it. That never matters. It does not matter. Being physically violent to others is a crime. You could also get in trouble for assault, no matter what led up to it. Self-defense is a little different. If someone is pushing you, that's not going to be self-defense. Self-defense is okay in immediately harmful situations. If someone's coming at you with a knife, if someone's pointing a gun at you, those are pretty much the only situations where you could use self-defense in court. Either way, you're still going to court. You probably will get you definitely will get arrested because, again, it is still not okay to harm anyone else. So it would be up to the court system to determine what is self-defense. But again, someone yelling at you or being mean, or even someone hitting or punching you does not constitute the ability to use self-defense, because you can just walk away, you can leave the situation. So yeah, it is never, ever okay to be physically violent towards others. Yeah, Adam, your manager is not going to be happy. Excellent. Okay, so now we talked about different types of harassment, different types of assault, but it's really important to know what to do if you are being harassed. So if you're being harassed at work, this is what a law office says to do. And again, all of these spreadsheets, the PowerPoint has resources on them so you can get more information. It'll also be at the end of the slides, and I'll put them in the chat as well so you can have them. So the 6 steps for if you're being harassed at work: you want to let someone you know, someone you trust, know about the incident. You want to document any comments or different treatment experienced, things like emails, texts, notes, letters, things like that. Keep your documentation in a safe place, and if possible, make copies of it. Gather all inappropriate texts, emails, notes, or other evidence. Report the harassment at work in writing, and then file a complaint with the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and this is their information. And if you're being harassed at school, the state website offers these 8 steps. Contact the principal or superintendent, contact the County Office of Education, contact the New Jersey Department of Education, appeal to the Commissioner of Education, file a complaint with the Division of Civil Rights, file a complaint with the Superior Court of New Jersey, contact law enforcement, and then contact Child Protection and Permanency if the person is underage. So something that you might notice is that the burden of action is on the victim/survivor. So if you're being harassed, it's unfair, but unfortunately, you are the one that has to do the work to get this reported, and you're probably going to have to follow up on everybody. It is not easy, but you definitely want to do this. And I'm sorry that that's the case, and I think that that should change, but unfortunately, that is the case. And if you're being harassed outside of work and school, there are lots of hotlines that you can call for different situations. First of all, if you ever feel like you want to harm yourself or someone else, please get immediate help. You can also talk to people at the National Alliance on Mental Illness 24/7, National Domestic Violence Hotline 24/7, National Sex Assault Hotline 24/7, and New Jersey Mental Health Cares 24/7. And I have this as a PDF, and I'm going to pop that in the chat right now, along with a crisis resource if you need that. So our last poll is, do you feel better equipped to socialize in a healthy manner after attending this webinar? Do you feel better at understanding those invisible social norms or boundaries, and how to understand boundaries and set your own boundaries. And while this poll is happening, I'm also going to put a PDF of the slides in the chat as well, so you can have all of the resources and all of the material that we went over today, because like I said, I know it is a lot of information. There's a lot to cover, and some of it is very confusing. So feel free to visit those resources and read the material as much as you need. All right. It's awesome. If whoever put, I don't know, if you want to put in the Q&A, and you can again do this anonymously, if there's anything I can help you with to help you feel better equipped to socialize in a healthy manner, let us know. So we have 88% say yes, which is awesome. And again, just one person who's not sure. So again, let me know if there's anything else you need support or resources on. So a little bit about our program, which can also help gather additional resources. So we do free virtual trainings like this. I can do this training specifically, or other trainings that we have available at virtually, your school or program. Again, all of our trainings are virtual right now. And then we are also doing something every day of the week. So if you would like to participate in that, I'm putting this handout in the chat as well. And all of these links are clickable in the handout in the chat. Everything is also available on our YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We also have a monthly newsletter that Frankie provides that is chock full of amazing information called Positive Pulse. And we have our weekly sessions of Healthy Lifestyles Project Live, and these are all free. And here are, oops, I clicked on the link. Here are the resources. Why isn't this going? Sorry, it keeps popping up. I keep pushing the link instead of trying to traverse the next page. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Nope. There we go. Okay. So here are the resources that we use today. And again, those are in the handout as well that I put in the chat box. And my personal information, if you would like to reach out with any questions you did not feel comfortable asking today in the chat or in the Q&A, feel free to email me. And here's also our website, our Facebook, our Instagram, and our Twitter information, as well as phone. But email is the best way to get in touch with us. So thank you so much for attending. Feel free to take any of the resources I put in the chat box and let me know if you need anything else. And I hope you have a wonderful day.